everyone. Welcome to the I Love Dentistry water cooler session with Dr. Robert Maguire. Dr. Maguire is a retired dentist who is an active member of our community. Of course, he helps other dentists also grow their practices. So he wanted to share some nuggets, some knowledge with us today. And the title of our conversation today is how to make the best decisions for your practice. Dr. Maguire, welcome to the I Love Dentistry water cooler session.
Thank you, Naren. Thank you for having me.
I know this is the second time you and I are speaking. You did another I Love Dentistry water cooler session a few months back. And you shared some very interesting thoughts, and there was a lot of interesting conversations from that. Before we jump in, you have been so active in the I Love Dentistry community. Tell us a little bit about what you like about the community and what kind of keeps you coming back and spending a lot of time here.
Naren, what I love about the I Love Dentistry community is it's a real place with real dentists sharing more than just clinical dentistry. So it's kind of a community. It's very collegial. And I find myself getting attached to the individuals. It's a family. And so
Right.
that's what I love about it. You introduce interesting questions more than just how do you do a crown prep or what impression material do you use? It's about life. It's about living. It's very real and very refreshing. And you have over 7,000 members now?
Yeah, 7,000 members, and majority of our members are practicing dentists.
Yeah.
We
So I
also have
think,
team members. Yeah.
yes, and team members too. I think the reason it's so attractive is the realness of of the place, and it's a place to get a lot of great nuggets and a lot of great wisdom from bald-headed, gray-haired guys like me.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. I totally agree, Dr. Maguire. Uh, Thank you. Appreciate that comment. And I think you also contribute a lot to the community and the questions you ask, the comments you make. So the one thing I like about it is, it's not like one person helping everyone. It's everyone helping everyone. It's like the idea of, what's that phrase? You need a village to raise a family. That kind of an idea. It's like we can together raise all of ourselves up as opposed to individually. So,
That's so true, and it's a place of abundance thinking
right.
that everybody
Absolutely.
is willing to share their knowledge with everybody. So it's very collegial, as I said, very family oriented. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know many people are watching us live, so I guess they're waiting to hear from you. You are the star of the moment. So let's dive in. How to make the best decisions for your practice.
All right. So the title of the article that I wrote most recently was called Looking In Before Looking Out. And so that refers to how we make decisions in our practices. And it was sparked by actually a Facebook post where a dentist was looking outside of his practice for answers to a particular situation. I think in this case, it was dropping PPOs. That seems to be the common concern at this point, or a common desire.
Yeah.
And so the whole purpose of the article was to say, hey, before you start looking out for solutions, look inside yourself. Look to your team and ask yourself, why do I want to do this? So essentially looking in is to answer the question, why? Why do I want to do a particular thing?
That's a
And
good
make sure you're,
that's a
go
good
ahead.
place to start, right? Like if you know the why, it gives you some kind of commitment. If, for example, uh, you know, I'm just thinking out loud. Let's say you are a parent and you want to make sure your children are provided for and they have a good education. So you are working really hard to, save money for their education. That desire to make sure that your children are okay for their education drives you. That why is important. So you're saying the step one is to figure out the why. Why do you want to do this?
Exactly. And it's the first step before you enter into the process of the actual decision making.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you focus on your purpose. It helps you focus on decisions in terms of, well, how will this best benefit my practice? How will this best benefit my patients? And so it's a collaborative type of process. Now, having said that, there are some decisions that you make in your practices as individuals. It might be a decision like, well, who will I use for my accountant? Or let's say you have gone to a course and you have learned to place implants using a particular system. Well, that might be a decision that you make by yourself. But as far as then implementing that into your practice, that's where your team comes in.
So let's take another example. So first example is going out of network, letting go of PPO. So you want to start with the why. That's a pre-step, right? But in the example of hiring an accountant, the why is I want to know what's happening with my business, so I can make better financial decisions, not at the end of the year, but throughout the year. That could be a why. I want to not have to deal with all these things because I don't enjoy certain parts of accounting and bookkeeping, so I want to give it to somebody else. I hear about all these tax savings. I want to make sure that I'm getting the most out of it. I know there's a lot of funding right now because of the COVID and so forth. I want an accountant who can just kind of do it for me, so I don't have to deal with all of this and make mistakes and all that stuff. So you just get the clear on the why, right? Because the why then will determine who you pick also almost. Like for example, if these are the reasons why you are doing it and the person you're talking to doesn't have knowledge or experience in these areas, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be picking this person. Is that one of the purposes of the why? In addition to giving you the commitment to really go forward, because you're like, I need to do this because it's such a huge opportunity, just getting this done.
Yes, and it's a commitment to go forward, but it really helps you figure out exactly what are my expectations of, in this case, my accountant. What is the problem that I want my accountant to help me with?
Right.
And in this situation, it's help me understand all this PPP and PPE expenses and all of that stuff.
Right.
So
and even do it for me, so I don't even have to figure out how to fill it for
so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And so those are the type of decisions that you would make as an individual.
Right.
But how about decisions regarding, I'm going to bring a new piece of equipment into my practice. So looking in, first you would answer, well, why?
Right.
But the other aspect of looking in, Naren, is you have a team of people who you can vet that, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? So tapping into your team in some instances is very helpful in you sorting out the process, first the why, but then how then are we going to implement this?
So before we jump into all the steps, can you just list me the steps so that I know kind of the anchors of the process?
Sure. So the first thing is you want to define what the issue is. Okay. What exactly is the issue? What is the problem that I'm trying to solve?
So a lot of times the why will answer the problems, right? Like all the examples I gave, reasons I gave you why I want an accountant is kind of the problems that I'm trying to solve.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that helps with that. But you want to be clear about, well, why do I even want to enter into this process? So compare it, Naren, to somebody who just says, yeah, I got to get a new accountant.
Yeah.
Well, why? I don't know. I just need a new one. I don't like the old guy
Yeah.
or the old person.
So it's like switching a bad, you know, arrangement with another bad arrangement because you haven't really thought through the why you are looking for this. In other words, the details. This new person should be able to take care of these 5 things we just talked about.
Well, and how about the compatibility with this
Right.
individual? How about the compatibility when you're hiring team members?
So, for example, if one of the frustrations was, I'm making this up, the old person we were talking to was not very thoughtful. And in other words, only thing he does is 3 months before, 2 months before the tax date, he says, "Oh, send me all the stuff," and then we are like trying to really figure all of this stuff at the last moment. There's no
You're
proactiveness.
scrambling.
Yeah, so you want somebody who's going to be proactive, who's going to say, "Hey, let's have these meetings on these schedules, and let's hear us how things are going to work, and here is the way we are going to do it." So that's what you mean by so because you know you're going to be busy with dentistry, so you want the accountant to be on top of. Actually, we have an amazing group of accountants we work with called the ADCPA, and we'll put a link at the end. But regardless of who the accountant is, you want to think these things through. I think so. You're saying just to kind of reinforce the point you're making. So you're saying the compatibility. How would this relationship work? How is this going to look like? So thinking those things through. What are your expectations on that? You know, like if you don't tell him that, hey, I'm expecting to have a conversation with you or insights from you every 3 months about how my business is doing, and you don't communicate it, he doesn't know that you're expecting that. And he might not be able to provide that because maybe his practice or her practice is not set up for that. Maybe they are not set up for having, you know, these conversations with their dentists and helping them navigate their business.
Yes. And so when you think about the why, this just came to me.
Yeah.
It's about fit, isn't it? It's about fitting in, a fit with you. It could be personality wise. It could be a fit with what your needs are. If it's a piece of equipment, it could be a fit. How is this going to fit into our practice? How is this going to benefit our patients? How are we going to implement this? An example, years ago, I was thinking about a digital pan. So for years I had practiced without having a digital pan. Well, I presented it to my team. What's the issue? Defining the problem. We don't have a Panorex. Our patients are having them all done with the oral surgeons, or what are some of the other reasons that we would want to bring that into the practice? So we had a discussion about that. We defined what the issue was. The issue is we don't have a panoramic machine. We would like one. Well, then we brainstorm from there. So the first step is defining the issue. The next step is, well, let's brainstorm some of the possible solutions. And some of those be, well, what type of pan do we want? What is the purpose that we're using this for? What type of patients will we be using this with, particularly children or teenagers with impacted third molars? Whatever it is, you just brainstorm the solutions. No discussion at this second step, just brainstorm it. And then the third step is you talk about each of those items in your brainstorm list. You discuss it. Everybody, when it's appropriate. So like in your accounting situation, that's you. That's a sole decision that the owner would make. But other decisions that are going to involve the team, you bring them all together and you go through these steps and you come up with what I love about the system, Naren, is it's quick, but it brings in everybody together, different perspectives. And
So
then go ahead.
let's dive deep into, I know you said some decisions you make on your own, like picking an accountant, you don't need to talk to your team, but some decisions you consult with your team, right? First of all, how do you differentiate? And second of all, one reason I can think you may want to consult your team is if the team has to support it, they have to want to make this succeed, then you want them involved right from the beginning, because then it's their decision as much as it's yours, right? So comment on those 2 points, like why do this and in what cases would you involve the team?
Okay. Any decision you make that's going to involve them You want their buy-in. And so if they are involved in the decision-making process, that gives them ownership. It increases the understanding of what you're trying to do. Let me tell you a major decision I made years ago in my practice.
Yeah.
So I was in private practice.
Before you go into that, I want to just throw a curveball because it just popped into my head, and maybe you could clarify. Like one of the, I mean, I work with quite a few dentists, and I work with Gary, who's a coach, in the Thriving Dentist. And one of the challenges that I think sometimes practice owners face that I've heard through Gary is they like there's sometimes embezzlement can be going on. Okay, like in other words, the person in charge, and I don't want to repeat names, but I've seen a few situations where the person in charge is kind of taking money from however she's doing it, and the minute somebody else is trying to get involved, whether it's a consultant or an accountant, she somehow tries to not see that happen because she doesn't want anybody keeping an eye on things, right? So how do you differentiate between like when do I take other people's advice and when do I not take other, because I mean a typical dentist might say, I love my office manager, she's been with me, but of course he's oblivious to what's going on because he totally trusts her. And I'm asking her, hey, I'm thinking of bringing in a new accountant, and they do all these things, they talk to us about our numbers, and she's like, no, I think we shouldn't do this. We have other things, But how do you know? Because sometimes that advice could really be counterproductive. That's why I called it a curveball. So how do you know when to throw, like when not to bring people, in that example?
Yeah, I think you have to, honestly, this is going to seem like a lame example, but you need to trust your gut. And so if I were making a decision about an accountant in what you just described, I'm making that decision. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rule on those individual decisions that you make versus bringing in your team.
So bring in your team when like for example you're buying a machine and they need to support it to get the most out of it. So that's when you bring in the team.
That's one example. Another example was when I started my practice, when I bought my practice in 1990, all the patients were coming in through the hygiene department. It was a hamster wheel practice. It was a turn and burn. I was going to die in early death. I was putting out fires all day long. And that's a model that works for some people. It didn't work for me. So after I had some education, I decided all new patients are going to see me first. So that involves the schedule. That involves everybody in the practice. Let's talk this through. I had some idea of how it was going to work, but I needed their buy-in, Naren. One of the mantras that I held all the years in my practice was inform before perform. Whenever appropriate, inform them before you perform it. Could be with patient care. It would be major decisions like, I am seeing all new patients first. Do you see the differentiation there?
Yeah.
But in terms of if I'm going to change prescribing certain medications, well, that's my decision. A 401k plan. Let's say I'm deciding to look for a new provider. Well, that's something that a decision I would make, probably with outside sources outside of my team. Right. So I guess when the decision involves your team members directly, that's when you want to bring them into the decision-making process. One, to see ideas, and two, to get different perspectives to help vet it so that you make the best decision. But it's so good. It's so good for a team when you involve them in the process.
Right. Makes sense. We have maybe 10 to 15 more minutes. So what are some of the other things we want to go through as we go through this conversation?
I think, Naren, my big love was for my patients and my team. And whenever I could involve my team in decision-making processes like this, I did. Because it gives them a sense of ownership. Wow, I was able to research this. I would like you to research. I'm thinking of using a new impression material. Would you research that for me? Great. Bring it back and let's talk about it. So those type of decisions involving your team are great. And then you see the teams work, you see the team members working together to solve problems.
Right.
And it was terrific. So that sense of ownership, that sense of, and when you reach out to your team members and ask for their opinion, you're validating them. You're saying to them, you are a contributor to this practice and I need you. You have information that I don't have. What are your thoughts? How could we better, do you see us doing this procedure a different way? For example, I had a new dental assistant years ago who came into the practice and she said, I see how you're making your provisional crowns, your temporary crowns. Could I share with you what we did in the other office? Like, sure. Well, guess what? We adopted that new procedure because it was better. So involving your team is for me, was a big plus in my practice.
I think sometimes people make good decisions, but then they don't follow through. They don't like in other words, I'll give you an example. We do marketing for doctors, and when somebody signs up with us and we start working with them, there are certain steps we go through and we need their involvement in those steps. So some doctors are excellent in knowing what those steps are and totally supporting us, and things move really fast. And some doctors don't do that. So sometimes, how do I put it? Decision might not be the end. It might be the beginning, and it's just, it's like decision is that first commitment, but then there are smaller commitments, the smaller things you have to do. And for example, going out of, PPO, it's not just a decision. There's so many things you have to do to make it happen,
Correct.
And if you don't need to know what those are, you need to know who's going to do it, and you have to have buy-in to get those done. And they have to be precise, like almost like this is exactly what the verbal skill should be when you answer this question. Like a lot of specificity, right?
Yes.
And I feel like that's an area where a lot of people fail. They make good decisions, but they don't follow through. They don't do the step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. So that decision might give them 20% of the benefit as opposed to the 100% of the benefit.
And so here we go, Naren, looking in and saying, why? What is keeping you from you're telling me you want to have success. And we've outlined these steps for you. Help me understand why you're dropping the ball. Looking in, look inside, answer the question. What are the reasons you're dropping the ball? I see it on the outside. I can see the big picture.
Right.
But can you?
Exactly.
And you can, what's the old expression? You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? It's that look inside and say, well, what is the reason that you're not, it just doesn't make sense, does it? You've got it all outlined and they're not doing it.
No, I think to be fair, I think we live in a time where there's a lot of done for you solutions. I mean, you press a button, Uber shows up. You know what I mean? You press a button, Netflix starts playing, as opposed to the old days, you drive to the video rental place, you look at all the movies, and half the movies you want to watch are gone, and you pick one of the remaining ones, you bring it home, pop it into the VCR with the popcorn you bought at I'm talking 20 years ago, Blockbuster, and then you forget to return it and they send you a bill for $100. Anyways, that's how we did things in those days. Right now, it's you pay a subscription fee, you press a button, it shows up anytime when there are new movies, because there's too many people on Netflix, so they can afford to make so much content for you. It goes on and on, right?
Yeah.
So what I try to do as a business owner is kind of the done for you. So most of it is done for you, but still we need that 5% help. So are we living in a time where the onus is on the companies that are providing services to kind of provide done for you, like, where people don't want to do anything, they just want to just say, you take care of this, you take care of that, and just somehow do it. I want to be the least amount involved as possible. I'm just playing a devil's advocate. Because
Yeah.
I know your generation. You are very thoughtful. You think things through. I mean, the grit, right? I mean, raised by the people who were born during the world wars, right? So it's like hard work, planning and thinking and accomplishing. But sometimes I'm thinking of my kids even. This is a totally different generation. Impatient. They want everything in a click. It's so. Is that part of what we are dealing with right now, where some of the things you're describing, like bringing the horse to the water and they don't want to drink or whatever? Is that just like you and I find it interesting and surprising, but just they were brought up differently?
I not that I'm totally blaming technology,
Yeah,
but think of it. This generation, we are bombarded with information,
yeah,
emails, cell phones, 24-hour news channels. It's just, and what happens is you become a human doing instead of a human being.
right.
And am I really enjoying the process? Or am I just
Doing,
on that, as I said, the hamster wheel? Am I running around like a chicken with my head cut off? And I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing, but
right.
and here's the other thing, meaning and purpose. You asked me, well, what's important to me? Meaning and purpose. And I think that comes as you get older. Before it was, yeah, I just want to make money. Well, then that leaves you empty. And so when you start focusing on your purpose and people and relationships, I sound like Robert Pick, don't I? When you focus on those relationships, and Gary would say the same thing, you focus on the geese that lay the golden eggs, and those golden eggs come. But yeah, I had to slow down to become more productive in my practice. That doesn't make sense, but that's how it worked.
Yeah,
So
it's
when I
like
said,
you have to slow down before you can speed up. Slow down, get things organized, get things under control, and then you can do it more and more and better, speed up.
and when you slow down, you can look in.
Mm,
So look in before you look out.
got it. So the key is we don't look in. We don't. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's problem. It's like never my fault. It's never, oh, it's that guy messed up. This person messed up. It's a patient who, just, like so. And you're saying that's the root of the problem. It's just we are not slowing down enough to look in. We are not slowing down enough to find out the why. We are not slowing down enough to get the people on board. We are not slowing down enough to think things through, the steps we have to take to be successful.
You got it, man. It's called, the way society is sometimes. You've heard that song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. Look
Yeah.
inside. You got the answers. You got a team that's got a whole bunch of answers. Just take a breath. Shut that cell phone off for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I think that famous quote, I think it was from Gandhi. He said the biggest problems I've dealt with were not out there. They were inside my mind.
Exactly.
It's not out there. It's not somebody else's, it's not the Britishers. It's not this, it's not that. It's inside me and my people. Of course, me is where it starts, and then my family, and then my people, and so forth and so forth. I mean, Gandhi is Gandhi, right? He had a big vision. So,
yeah.
But
you got to get out of your head to get into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart is where it matters from Rob Maguire's perspective.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maguire. Appreciate your time and comments. If I know you're very active in the community, so if somebody wants to get a hold of you, is it just too easy to message you or something? Is that how you want to be contacted?
They can Facebook message me, or they can reach out to me in my email, which is contact@thefulfillment.coach.
Okay. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, contact at thefulfillment.coach.
Got it. Got it. Perfect. Thank you so much. I think it's a great, quick 30-minute conversation. And like you
Thanks,
said, people
man.
want things fast these days. So we try to.
Get 'em, baby. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Thank you
me
for
too.
having
Thank you
me.
so much. Have a wonderful
Okay.
day. Bye
All
for
right.
now.
You too. Bye.